Okay, hello, nice to have you on board. Welcome to Road to Vostok Dev Session 2. Nice to have you here. How is everybody doing tonight or tomorrow, wherever you live? In Finland it's tonight, nighttime, but how are you guys doing? Also, let's check the audio. Is the microphone okay? I did some configurations. And is the screen/stream clear and visible to you? Audio is good, great. All good, sounds good. That's great. Okay, let's get straight into it. I have kind of similar method than previously, some stream notes that I will go through this time, and let's start from the top. The first thing is that I tried to make a couple of improvements to the stream. The first improvement was that those who were participating in the last time, remember that there were some problems with the bots. So this time I checked the box which meant only subscribers can comment, so that's maybe helps with the issue. Also, I made a naughty word keyword list to YouTube. There's this like banned words section, so maybe that will help also. And on top of this, I tried to make a little more preparations to the like tools, files, and the general workflow of how I want to present things in the stream. So maybe the experience this time is a little bit smoother, maybe. And also, to be honest, the last time I was kind of nervous. I don't often get nervous, but there's something about streaming that is nerve-wracking. I don't know what that is, but maybe this time I'm a bit more relaxed. So, but there's a maybe in this also. But I at least feel a bit more relaxed now than before. So those are the improvements. Let's see how those will go. But let's jump in the first topic. There's like 6 topics in this dev session. The first one is the recap. I made a small post on Twitter which highlighted these topics, but the first one is recap. I will go through the kind of like highlights of the month that was happened in the development. There's equipment system, some things about items, location photography, audio-based stuff, ambient collection and original soundtrack, and there's some house cleaning that I did with the project, so I will go through some of these. After that section, I will showcase not the actual maps, but I will discuss all of those Area 5 maps. There are 10 of those, and it's kind of like overview. There's a good comment. Imagine all of us are naked. I don't know if that should help, but okay, I maybe imagine that, but this time I feel pretty okay, so I don't know if that's necessary. But yeah, the second one, Area 5 Maps Overview. I'm going to show all photos of the maps that will be in public demo 2, some discussion about shelters, transitions, and map events. The third topic is like this community-based brainstorm session. There's one specific feature/mechanic that I want to get some ideas on. I have basically recently done tons of mechanics and features, and the next big mechanic and system will be the attachment system. But it's difficult to know what I specifically want to do, because there's so many ways to approach this attachment system. So I maybe thought that we could brainstorm this system together. The next topic will be I don't know why this number 4. I think I can show it here, so actually we can do something like this. Okay, the next one is advanced texturing. I'm currently doing that new shipyard map, and there's those big silos in the map, and I thought that I will be texturing those live and showing some ideology and techniques that goes into like big massive structures. And we also take a look if there's some Escape from Tarkov fans on the chat. We are going to look a small section of the very early Tarkov devlogs and how they do this vertex paint and how I approach it. And then I'm going to build from scratch a shader for those silos, and then we are going to finalize that silo object, and it will be showcased in tomorrow's video. And also there was few donations on the chat before. Thank you Itach Hisa and Shiv. Huge thanks. One thing that I'm not sure if I have improved is like this my chat experience, meaning can I observe the chat while I'm doing this dev stuff, but I think I'm slowly getting better in that part also. But yeah, these are the topics today, and there was one question asking how long is this session. If I would guess, I would say probably 2 hours is pretty close. I would say this part is at least 1 hour, and depending on how much we want to brainstorm and go through these maps, I would say around 2 hours is the optimal amount for this session. I'm going through some comments on the chat. All good. You are doing really well. Thanks. Are you gonna keep the new loadout UI, or is it just a placeholder? I'm going to stick with it at least for now. I really like this minimal style, and it's also really easy to debug because it's so simple and minimal. So I think for public demo 2 at least, that will be the direction that I will be using, but after that, meaning commercial version, I'm not that sure what direction I want to take. But in general, I like minimal UIs, no much icons or anything fancy like that. And also huge thanks again for the donations. I maybe get me out of Escape from Tarkov, please. I think there's a place for multiple titles in this genre. Tarkov does great job in multiplayer PvP. Actually, did some patch today? I remember I read something from Twitter. Was there like some cool big new event or something? I have no idea, but if some of you are Tarkov players, I read that there was some patch today. There's server locked now. Okay. It's fun to see when they release that Streets map, which has been hyped for multiple years, what happens when that map gets released. I haven't played Tarkov in probably 2 years. I played maybe 200 hours at the very beginning then. But it's a great game, and I have huge respect for because they like combined this FPS RPG hybrid and did something that wasn't existing in the market, so props to them. But now, back to Road to Vostok. Let's start with the recap. So in this month, last month I did an inventory system. This month the one big thing was the equipment system, which integrated with the inventory system. And my goal with the equipment system was to have like functional thing with the new inventory. There wasn't any big like innovations to having like the best equipment system in the survival genre. It was more like I want to have a working equipment thing so I can move towards other mechanics. But yeah, I can show, because I know that all of you are not Patreon supporters, though those guys already got to test with the new system, but I will showcase some aspects of how this equipment system works currently, and also in tomorrow's VIP video there will be a section to this. Like in previous VIP video there was the end section highlighted the new inventory system. But yeah, let's jump straight into Unity, and this next demonstration is kind of like small gameplay thing in this sandbox map, and I have done a couple of clothing items. These are not all, there are also others on top of these, but I will use these to highlight how this thing works now. So I'm going to be silent for a while and kind of like fiddle around with this new system, and you get to experience how this is currently. Also, let's check if the game audio works with the stream. I have no idea. I should have configured it, but in previous session we didn't test it maybe. Does this audio relay to chat and stream? Sound is good. Okay, great. And there's also this like HUD element on the screen. Personally, I don't like any UI elements on the gameplay screen, so you can hide that. But if some of you like using a HUD, for example, if I'm holding a medkit now, it's kind of like hot slot. When I press number 5, it would use that medkit, and it also shows what kind of equipment and weapons, secondary and primary, I have currently. But that's a toggle, so you can hide that. And there's also the hover tooltip also works now with the equipment system, and the idea is that you could place equipments in multiple ways, and this is like the one improvement that I wanted to have with public demo 1, because the equipment system was so bad in that. So for example, if you want to drag directly into the slot, you can do that. You can drag out of the slot. You can use this light highlight feature. If you don't know in which slot the item can be placed, you can highlight it to on top of the character, and it will highlight the rig slot, for example, and also backpack slot, and you can just drag and drop stuff onto your character and it automatically switches the equipment. And if some of you are fans of the game Neo Scavenger, this system is inspired by that. I don't know if the right word is paper doll system, but these are just like 2D sprites. And why these are in 2D format is development speed, because if I would use an actual 3D character visualization, it would be so complex in many areas, so it would like drag down the development. And with this system I can basically add new equipment within half an hour to the game, because I have templates for all of these, and it's super quick to add items, clothing and equipment to the game. So this 2D approach will be the first implementation of this system. One thing that isn't yet available is those 3D arms. It's kind of like disconnected. For example, if I put this tactical fleece jacket on, I should have fleece jacket arms, but I don't have. So the 3D link isn't there yet, but it will be done in the future. Also, one thing that will be added is this inventory weight. This is kind of like bad word for this, but I think the better word will be weight capacity, and more equipment you put on your character that have like logical slots, they increase that inventory capacity. But currently that number is just static, but in the game it will be like you start from maybe 10, and then when you put on pants which have pockets and logical space, the inventory capacity or weight capacity increases to maybe 20 and so on. And then when you have all these slots, basically the right slots are clothing, left slots are equipment, weapons, utility, and kind of like hard surface objects. So this one will increase or decrease the weight capacity, and these are displayed on the hot slots on the HUD, and which you can use. I'm not sure yet if I want to test the slot number 7, which means optics. I originally planned that it would be slots for binoculars and night vision goggles, but I'm not sure how many optic related items will be in the game. Maybe some rangefinders and such, but I don't know if that slot has to be that specific for few items. So there could be some changes to what slots are displayed here, but I think the main idea is what you saw just. I'm going through some comments. What did you think about the system? Shiv is going crazy with the donations. Huge thank you. Also thank you, Lucas. And seems like you guys like the system so far. In Finnish, toimii. And if we are referring that famous Bethesda phrase, it just works. There's multiple issues still. One issue, if I remember correctly, some people on Patreon found out that you can, if you rotate an item while equipping a weapon, the weapon gets reloaded. Let's test this. I haven't fixed this yet, but actually I need some item to rotate it. So yeah, if I rotate the item, the weapon in the game world gets reloaded, and that's unwanted behavior, but those will be fixed. And some small tease, there's also a new pistol in the game, will be highlighted in the tomorrow's. The caliber and those details are not right yet. This should be 45 ACP, but I will showcase more of this tomorrow. There's also object physics, meaning projectiles now affects the items. But yeah, that was the equipment system. One recap related to items and clothing is that I have this template system that works with the new equipment system. I can show it to you. It's basically a Photoshop file. I think this specific file is like a backup from the actual file, so there might be some unnamed layers and so on. But the idea is that you basically have this like a fast template where you can like snap photos on top of the character model, and these will be right dimensions to the game engine. So I'm using this template, and I have some like Photoshop macros. I don't know if that's the right word, to automate some of these tasks. But basically I act myself. I'm the model. I put real clothes on top of me, and then I use a selfie stick that I place on the floor. I put a timed picture I get on top front of the phone, I take a picture, I cut from the clothes from the picture, and then this system plays those and warps these on top of the character, and then I just put these sprites to the game engine. So that's like the core of this system. But yeah, those items will be, are actually, because this is a recap, in this month, I think I did probably 20 new items to the game. Some are here, but there is still some that I haven't shown in public. But having a fast way to add items and clothing in the game is a huge thing, because I want this game to like provide that this is your character feeling, and it's annoying that if there's only like 10 pieces of clothing, then every character looks the same. So I want to have huge variety in clothes and items, so you can like really customize your character preview. But yeah, that was items and clothing. The next recap topic is related to photography. In Finland, there's snow currently. Winter is coming, and this kind of like put some pressure to the development, because if we think the whole year as a calendar, the public demo 2 will be released around same time next year like the previous demo, so September, end of September 2023, and there will be many months in Finland where there's snow on the ground, and snow is like really bad thing for photo textures, because snow like blows out all the pictures, white balance is off, snow ruins the textures because there's snow everywhere. So I had to like rush and get all the locations photographed before the snow. Of course, the snow melts in spring, but I wanted to make sure that I have like reserve of photos during the winter time, so I can make all the public demo 2 maps even though if there are snow in the ground. This is like northern Finnish specific dilemma, but I spent huge amount in this month photographing areas in order to make sure that I have enough photos during the winter time. That's done. The next thing is that if you guys haven't watched on social media, the next demo will, by the way, I'm mostly active on Twitter currently, so if you haven't followed Road to Vostok there, it's a good place to like have recent updates and news. But I basically teamed up with one Finnish composer, and our task or goal is to create this thing called ambient collection. The next demo will be all about the actual gameplay loop, meaning you can experience going to Vostok side of the map, and there's specific ambient like levels when you're moving horizontally through the map. And more east you go, I want that the ambient becomes more tense and frightening. So there has to be like this really good ambient system and tracks for that ideology. So the first 2 ambient collection tracks are available on SoundCloud if you want to listen that, and also there was 2 new original soundtrack tracks from Joeler, who have made the previous tracks also. So those were published on YouTube. Was it yesterday? Yes, maybe yesterday. But yeah, those were the audio stuff. The final recap thing is that game development is sometimes really messy, meaning, for example, Road to Vostok requires thousands and thousands of files, and from time to time, when you are doing stuff in the game development world, things get messy. Those files are not maybe named properly, or some structures are not formed properly. So from time to time, it's important to clean your development environment, if I could phrase that like that. For example, I had huge number of like temporary items on the game project, and those were annoying, distracting, so I cleaned all the file structures on the game engine, and also my asset database and item database, those were cleaned also. This is something that is not, you can't notice this while looking Road to Vostok development videos or something like that, but this is important because I'm working on a daily basis from these tools, and those tools need to be tidy and fun to work with. So this was like internal stuff that I did. But yeah, that was the recap of November. One question, what the goddamn have missed the first dev session? If you want to look that, I think there's some links, I can link it in the chat also, but it's private on YouTube. If you want to look that after, I can send you the link. So those are not deleted, they are just private. What about the plot? I think we could save these questions. Maybe one break could be here. We can do small Q&A here, but the last part is dedicated to Q&A, so I'm trying to like save time, not to go through all questions, but to answer what about the plot. Road to Vostok actually has a quite in-depth lore written to the game world, and it's in the design document that I did over a year ago. The lore is displayed in the game through multiple ways. There's like small environmental clues that tell what has happened to the game world, and there's specific quests that will tell that also, but the story isn't like this big thing that you are the hero and this is the red line you have to follow to go through this story. I don't want to provide gameplay experience like that. This game is more of like a sandbox. There's the story if you want to experience it, but the gameplay experience and Road to Vostok, that danger journey, is the main story, if I could put that like that. So kind of similar like Tarkov. Tarkov, I mean in Stalker. In Stalker you basically want to head up north to the nuclear power plant, but it's not forced to you. You can narrate through the story whenever you want. So the idea is here the same. And thanks Neutra Music for the donations and wishing good lucks. But yeah, I think now we can do some revelations and show some Area 05 maps, and we're talking like really overview stuff here, but I will showcase things that I haven't discussed before, and you are also free to comment and share ideas if you have some towards what I'm going to show. But I'm going to start with explaining the like base premise of what is Area 05 and show few examples of the maps and how they are linked to the game world. I'm sure many of you have watched maybe the first introduction devlog video that also like highlighted the game design aspect of Road to Vostok, but I'm going to recap that in this also. I have this Purref file which holds multiple images that I made for this stream, and this is basically the world map, not the actual world map, more kind of like promotional world map. These black elements are all the maps that have been planned for the like full game experience on the Area 05 side, and basically you have witnessed an early version of the village map. It's not the commercial version, but I will update the public demo at some point and you get to witness the whole village map. But basically there's 10 maps in Area 05, and currently I'm working on the shipyard map, and for the public demo 2 there will be 3 maps in this section and 1 map in Vostok section. And the new maps that I haven't discussed before is that there's going to be a map, basically this is Finland side of the map, so there's this old highway that goes through here, so there's a map for highway, there's going to be some gas stations and abandoned vehicles, and there's also one cool map event related to trucks, but I don't think now's the good time to talk about that yet. There's farms, swamps, lakes, quarry and airfield. And basically I have photographed all the maps that are most important currently, and that will be linked to that public demo 2. The actual map amount for public demo 2 is 3 Area 5 maps, meaning production ready. But I have also photographed some of these that are not included in the public demo, just to make sure that I have enough photos for the winter if there's some unexpected things. But yeah, on top of these maps there will be like crossing points to the border, and these are specific 3D environments and kind of like small, I wouldn't say puzzles, but for example one crossing point is a broken bridge, and only way to cross the border is by using a bridge, and that bridge has like these fragmented pieces of wood and metal, and you have to jump across these. So even though this is an FPS survival game, there's some like specific points which demand specific gameplay skills. For example, movement and jumping is important in that bridge crossing point, and other crossing points are more specific to combat. But whenever you cross the border, you always have to use crossing points, and there's multiple ones, and you can access the crossing points through these eastern Area 5 maps. And then let's look a couple of photos. The village map is the most known. It was small part of it was in public demo 1. It will be double the size and much more detailed in the full version when I update that first demo, but it basically looked like this. Some of these houses might be familiar to you if you played the demo. This area is more of this like rural countryside, forest paths, not much industrial or big buildings. The next map that I'm working currently is Shipyard. This is totally different than the village map. This will include these huge industrial structures and like more vertical elements to the level design. There's this airwalk. I don't remember what this was called in English, but I showed some of these things in previous dev session when we did a block out from the shipyard, and I really believe that this will be like really good map for the game. It's a good combination of verticality, forest areas, commercial areas, big structures, small structures, and this will be in the public demo too. And tonight we are going to texture one of these. We are not going to do those decals, but we are doing the like concrete foundations and main textures for one of these, because these big structures require a special technique to texturing. But yeah, that was the shipyard. It's located here, so it's one of the most western maps. The next is airfield. I actually showed few pictures in one VIP video, if I remember correctly. These photos are not the best way to portray this map, but there will be old military helicopters that have crashed in these areas. There will be like enemy snipers in the woods, and this is like really high risk area, but there will be burned and crashed helicopters around somewhere here, and if you want to access those helicopters, you have to do similar things like in DayZ. When you have a crash site, you are basically on the lookout to get that cool loot, but there's a high risk, high reward situation going on. But there's also these hangars on the airfield. There's, I don't know what this picture is. There isn't going to be a tractor, but some fuel tanks, because fuel will be a thing in the game. And then there are these old military barracks. So that will be airfield, and it's all the way up here. There was one comment about fishing, and yes, fishing is a thing. So you can fish in the game. Whenever there's water, you can fish. But yeah, fishing will be also in the public demo too. Now, some maps that I haven't talked about. I'm not sure which one of these I want to have in public demo too, but it's going to be either one of these. The outpost is this like, how would I describe it the best? It's an old like military bunker site which is embedded in the nature and these cliff environments. In this map there will be tents and like I would say military supplies in general in this area, and there's an uphill area on top of the cliffs, and then there's all kinds of like underground structures on the outpost. These are pretty historical in Finnish like war history, but basically these are like concrete bunkers that are for like most designed to protect you from air bombings and so on. So this is kind of like how they look, and there's all kinds of these cool peek holes where you can shoot stuff or be shot. So that will be the outpost, and it's the most eastern one of the map, so it's basically an intermediate level. So there's going to be high level of AI activity, and also the AI will behave differently than in, for example, in shipyard. In outpost there will be places that you can get ambushed, and there's also like group dynamics to the AI. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to get those in public demo too, but the idea is that 5 of the maps will be like green maps and the most easy ones, and 5 of the maps will be intermediate ones. And now, one new thing that I haven't talked about. Have you guys played or know the game My Summer Car, which is also being developed by Finnish developer? Yeah, there's a thing called Teimon kauppa, and in Finland and probably in many other countries as well, these like small shops and like these village shops, general stores are like a big thing. Nowadays they don't exist that more, but maybe 20 years back it felt like in every corner there's some small shop. And in Road to Vostok I want to implement something similar like in My Summer Car, and the ideology is that you have these hostile maps, but one of these maps will have an like demilitarized area inside the map, and I'm designing that it will be a map called Store, and it will hold this like common general store that even the AIs can visit, and within certain perimeter you can shoot the AI and the AI can shoot you. But whenever you go outside of the perimeter, then it's free for all, basically. And through this store, there will be like a message board through on the wall of the store, and some quests are also displayed on the message board. So the store is supposed to be this like common place on the game world, where the AI, kind of the same as in Stalker, there are these like camps where you can meet others and so on. So I'm designing that this store would be one of those places. You can trade, there's going to be like this general trader on that map, but this map will also include other areas. It's not just a shop. There's all kinds of like warehouses and place you can find loot and so on. And it will be placed here. I'm not sure if this store will be in public demo too, probably not, but in full release, the store will have huge impact on the gameplay because you basically want like to design your route to the Vostok in a way that the store is somewhat accessible to you. And walking isn't the only way to access these maps. There's going to be different like fast methods. For example, you can use boat to through the water area, and there's different forest things related to some vehicles. So there's going to be like different options to like bounce around within each map. But yeah, those were Area 5 maps and ideology that goes around them. What do you guys think about the store idea? It's not that, I would say, special to survival games. Many games have similar ideas. For example, the game Deadside has something similar where there's like red ribbons around certain areas that you can shoot AI and so on. But what do you guys think about this idea? Seems like pretty positive approach. And one thing that is related to this store is that like the catalog of things will be there's a specific system of how like traders handle items, and it's based on this like real world truck deliveries and basically like supply chains. For example, in certain weekdays, the store might be really empty. There's only like few common items available, but in some days there will be a truck delivery through this highway post, and there will be an actual truck driving that will head down to the store, and it will park behind the store somewhere here, and whenever the truck delivery is arrived, the store basically resupplies some of the things. But that truck delivery isn't always on time. There's specific like delays and events that will affect that. For example, one event that happens on the highway, if you see the truck and you shut down the truck, you can access high tier loot that was inside the truck, but then there will be no deliveries to the store. So there's this like cool ecosystem that you can affect through the gameplay, and which kind of like links the whole game world and how the AI will act on the store if there's no supplies there. You can't hijack it, but you can shut it down in a way that it stops, and if you kill the driver, it will defend itself, but if you kill the driver, and then you can loot the truck, and there will be like cool high tier loot. And I have done small test for this truck, and especially in the night time when the truck drives and there's these like headlights and you are ambushing it somewhere in the forest, I think that's really a cool mechanic to have in a game. And also these moments that you expect that the truck will come, but it doesn't come, it also like provides this dynamic thing that you tried to ambush the truck, but something happened maybe here, so the truck didn't arrive. Can you extort the driver? The driver will be really rude, dude. If you try to stop the truck, the driver is always hostile and tries to kill you, because the driver he has only one purpose, and it's to get to the store. There's some symbiosis with the store owner and the truck driver, so no extortion, but stopping the truck is a possibility if you shut down the tires or the driver. one question, will it supply the Vostok area? Everything that goes around here, I have made the decision that the whole idea of this game is that this is the like big mysterious thing. So I made a decision that I'm not going to cover almost anything Vostok related things in any videos or dev sessions, and I think nowadays games are so accessible and everything is told to the player and everything is known. There's tutorials, guides and things. So I want to keep this Vostok as mysterious as possible as long as I can. Meaning, for example, when you first time enter the Vostok site, you have no idea what you will encounter here. I have so many cool ideas to this site that I don't want to ruin things by telling them. And also one of my favorite things from the early days of gaming was when I played the Arma 2 DayZ mod. I really miss that feeling that you are in some gameplay world. I was, for example, on front of this Russian sign that said something in maybe the town name, and I had absolutely zero idea where I was, what to do, and I haven't really experienced that for a long time. So this Vostok will be kind of in similar ideology. So I want to keep this in total darkness. But in public demo 2, you can visit the first map because that demo is all about the gameplay experience and crossing the border. But there will be 10 maps here, maybe 6 of them I have already designed, no photos yet, but I know where they are located, but there's no hurry to make those yet. Only one map has to be made for public demo 2. And these all will be red maps, so hard difficulty and a permanent zone. But yeah, that was the maps. Hopefully there was some information that was interesting, and currently there will be village map expansion and shipyard will be in public demo 2, and I will choose either a highway or the outpost for the third map in public demo 2. I'm not sure yet which I want to choose, and these airfields, stores, lakes, farms, swamps will be after the public demo 2, probably near the early access. But yeah, this highway map will be also really cool. I really like that gas station thing that will be in there. Okay, let's go few questions. Surely you can buy cheaper petrol from the Vostok side. That may be a thing. Can you repair clothes or items when you destroy them with shooting? Yes, there will be some. Every item in the game will have some condition percent, and if you ruin your clothes, there will be a way to get them back to condition 100%. If you die at the crossing point, is it a permadeath? No. The permadeath only, by the way, this is a permadeath icon. We did that also last month. So whenever you cross the border zone, meaning you use that crossing point and you enter the first Vostok map, then this icon will be highlighted on your top left corner. It can be hidden if you don't like those HUD elements like I. But whenever you're on the Vostok side, that skull will appear then, and then you are in the permadeath. So crossing point, if you die there, you get just back to your save from one of the shelters. Do you still develop the game alone or get some help sometimes? I solo developed this completely. Only help that I get currently is audio related. So I have one amazing talent is doing the original soundtrack, but that's also not full-time thing. It's this freelancer stuff that happens not that often, and also one connection is those ambient collections, but other than that I do everything by myself, and that's a there's a specific reason why I develop this game in that sense. It's not because I just want to make everything by myself. It's also related to financials and how to handle this big commercial game, because if I would not approach this in this way, then this project would require funding, which means publishers, Kickstarters, pre-orders, and I don't want to go any of those routes currently, because I believe that I can make the best possible experience when there's no pressure, meaning there's no Kickstarter deliveries that would have been made, or there's no big publisher that would want to things go in certain way. I'm not saying that I will be always totally 100% independent, but in this part of the development, I think it's important to stay independent and do things by myself, so I can like manage the financial side of the project, because I'm doing this full time, and if I would hire multiple team members, the burn rate for the production would be much higher. Plus, I actually like to make these things by myself, so I'm enjoying this as long as I can. Will there be a modding in the future? Yes, there will be multiple systems that already support modding and are modding friendly, but I think I will implement those actual modding toolkits probably after the early access. But I really like how Stalker has evolved and stay relevant to the modding community. I have already published some free assets that I made, so I plan to continue that route, meaning more free assets, more tools to the future community of the game, but it's way too early for that. This game needs meat and bones first, and meaning more content, more maps, more features, and the actual gameplay. But yeah, that was the map part. I think one topic about shelters that I wanted to mention is that at first I thought that these shelters could be like separate kind of small maps, but I'm leaning more towards that these shelters can be found inside the map. For example, in village, when it's double the size, one of the village houses could be the village shelter, so it doesn't require a separate transition, and there's all kinds of cool gameplay mechanics related that if you enter the house and use that your shelter inside the map, there could be like this somebody's knocking at the door, or there's an AI threat if you don't lock your door and something like that. So I'm leaning maybe more towards in-map shelters than separate 3D maps and game scenes. But I'm not sure about this yet, but the public demo will have specific shelter mechanics, which means you can sleep, you can move props around and customize that shelter to be more like this is my place kind of thing. Yeah, I think that truck event example was one thing related to this. I'm planning each map a specific map event. For example, in the village, you maybe saw in the demo that there was a jet flying on top of the village, and it was coded in a specific way that that jet has a different angle where it comes, but it always goes towards east. And in the end game, in the early game, you can't do nothing about the jet. It just flies over in sometimes, and it will be much more rare than it was in the demo. But in the end game, you can maybe shut down the jet with some solder-mounted projectile thing. For example, there's these like air missiles that you can use, but those will be like super rare. And the thing is that if you can shut down the jet and it flies towards the east, it will land some maps that are further down the east. For example, if you can track the missile down to the jet, that jet may be a crash site that will appear on the outpost map, for example. So each map will have some event. I have now revealed 2 events. Highway will have a truck event, village will have a jet flyby event, but you can't, in some event you can like interact immediately, but some require specific items and tools that you can only access in endgame, for example. But each map will have some kind of unique event. Okay. Is everybody still doing all right? I think when I started this session, I mentioned that I at least feel more relaxed. So I can confirm that I actually do feel more relaxed and enjoying much more this dev session than the previous one. So I'm having fun. How about you? Is everything all right? Okay, everything is great. One question, do you ever fear going, I don't know who's Peter Molyneux, but promising stuff because of public pressure and then ending up cutting corners due to time and money constraints? Currently, I don't feel any public pressure because there's no, like I mentioned, there's no Kickstarter campaigns and there's no like real ties to some entity that would be able to give me that pressure. So I'm just solo developer, indie developer, and there's no pressure at all, or I'm just operating on my own terms, and that's like the really cool part of this phase of the development, because I do this all by myself and I don't have that pressure. And huge thanks to all Patreon supporters. They also relieve that financial pressure immensely. So at the time, no pressure at all. And that's exactly the reason why I don't want to make any publishing deals or anything like that now, because then it would maybe require cutting some corners due to time or money. But yeah, no pressure. Okay, creator of Fable. I don't know. How I don't know that guy, even though I have been in the game industry for over 10 years. Maybe I do know, but at least for now that name doesn't ring any bell for me. Okay, let's go through the topic number 3 and then have a small beverage break. The one specific thing that I would like to ask your opinions is the attachment system. And there's all kinds of attachment systems in the survival genre. DayZ does this like UI-based drop site to this slot thing. Then there's, for example, some in-game like 3D attachment systems, meaning you hold the gun in front of you and there's some small UI elements where you can toggle or select the attachments. And one thing that I'm currently approaching is this like crisis-based weapon thing, which is in-game. You have probably seen that in Road to Vostok, the guy raises the weapon on front of you, and there's small UI elements that highlight which side, muzzle, and so on. And this is the current approach that I'm taking. And the idea is that when you have, for example, silencers or suppressors, sights, lights on your inventory, you can access them through the kind of like weapon inspection menu. And then when you equip an attachment, it will be displayed on your gun, and that slot will be taken, and the item will be taken from your inventory grid and placed to the weapon. And then if you put that modded weapon back to the inventory, it will have a small M letter and sign on the icon, meaning that weapon is modded. I'm afraid I can't yet do that cool Tarkov thing that the icon of the weapon updates also, because that system is pretty in-depth, but I think the current M-mark approach is fine for now. But I'm not 100% sure if this is a good way to handle things in-game, because Road to Vostok is supposed to be this realistic hardcore survival game, and swapping equipments and attachments like instantly through this menu isn't realistic. Games don't have to be realistic, but it's one thing to consider. So I'm asking your opinion. What do you think about this approach that I'm taking currently, or do you wish to see some other way of handling attachments in the game? I will be silent for a while. I'm going through the messages. I know that Tarkov is basically the milestone and the bar for best weapon system, but it can't be that complex. There has to be some middle ground for solo developers, so all opinions are available. There's few comments about swapping muzzle and scopes can be on the fly, but other attachments would be something that you do in your shelter, for example using some workbench or some other mechanic. On a weapon stand. Weapon stand is one approach that the game Metro, Exodus for example, and I think all the other Metros do also. Some comments lean towards the workbench or tool related. One option is also that the store isn't the only only map that holds traders. I'm planning to do a separate like gunsmith trader that is related to some quests, and one aspect how I could approach this is also that when you start the game, you're basically a noob when it comes to weapons, and the only way to get like big upgrades to weapons is through that gunsmith, but whenever your weapon skills on or some other skill that is related to that increases, then you can do these attachment changes by yourself. But I'm not sure if I would like that for myself, because attachments are like clothes for your weapon, and customizing a weapon is really important. So having like restrictions to that, I'm not that sure, but getting down to high knee stance and taking out a hex key to attach. Kind of interesting ideas, but I do agree with some comments that the absolute instant millisecond amount of time of changing the attachments, like in Crysis, might be too fast for this type of game, which is supposed to be this type slow, thinkful, tactical, hardcore. So there may have to be some delay, animation, stance, or something that goes to this. I'm not sure if some just loading UI element is a thing. I don't know if that's cool, but and one comment was there should also be an option for realistic mode. Yeah, I don't know, maybe if there's some like gameplay option that you can choose if you want to have realistic weapon attachment system or instant. In terms of animations, there were a couple of questions about animating these. I try to avoid as much as I can custom arm rig animations that require keyframes, because they slow down the development immensely, meaning every new weapon that is added to the game, I try to avoid any animation work, reload animations, and that will be a thing in the future, but I would highly want that there's some guy doing it for me, because if I would have to do those animations by myself, the whole development progress again slows down significantly. So in this first phase of the development, this attachment system should not require any keyframe animations. But yeah, I do agree that this instant transfer thing is maybe too arcadey and not suitable for this type of game. There's so many messages that I will probably, when I end the stream, I will go through those again and see some comments. But there's so many ways to approach this that maybe I have to do some poll in Twitter or somewhere to see what kind of thing people like. Although I'm not sure. But that attachment system is the next big system that I will do in next month. So this is kind of like hot topic currently. But maybe some voting polls and idea changing is still needed, and I will go through those ideas that you typed in the chat after this dev session. But yeah, we don't have to get stuck in this topic. Like I mentioned, I will go through those messages. So thank you if you gave your opinion. I will look it after this stream. And that was our brainstorm. I don't know how I envisioned that this would go. I maybe expected that this stream would be a format to go through this, but it's kind of weird to just sit down yourself silently and watch chat scrolling by, so maybe not the best way to brainstorm stuff, but at least we tried. Okay, a couple of questions, and let's then take a small break, and then we get into texturing stuff and actually making a work that progresses the game, and which will be shown tomorrow's whip video. And thanks for the donation. Captain Austrian 95. Thank you. Yeah, it's definitely difficult to read 300 comments and reply to everything. But yeah, if you have some questions before the break, just give it a go. I maybe answer 5 to 10 ones, and then let's have a small break. And the donation had a question. Sorry, I totally missed that. If we find new scopes, will we have to zero them first? Yeah, I actually discussed this scope zeroing with a couple of real professionals related to firearms, and the way that those scopes actually work, that when you once zero them, and even though you bang your weapon and do all kinds of things, that zeroing isn't something that has to be done all the time, but when you apply a new attachment to your weapon in-game, that's maybe a little over the line what is fun in terms of realistic and fun. I would say zeroing your weapon, if we talk about realistical sense, it would require shooting, and shooting makes sound, and sound attracts AI, and it would be like this really weird combination that you have to shoot and make noise, and then you are in the risk of attracting AI, and all this is just for zeroing down one side. So I may be leaning more towards zeroing weapons in video game, at least in this type of video game, is something that is maybe a bit more annoying than it's fun. I'm not sure if you're... Yeah, there's one comment, zeroing is a recipe for frustration, so maybe I think similar way, that zeroing would be some kind of other mechanic, but not actual every scope and sight must be zeroed. And thanks Sindri for the donation. Will you support Windows 7, 8? I don't know if actually, have you tried the demo? Is it supported already? Because in Unity and these game engines, there isn't any like which specific Windows you want to support. It's just Windows, Mac, Linux, and so on. So I would guess that Windows other versions are already supported. I might be wrong, but will the game support controller controls? In the future, yes. Currently, those like keys are hard-coded, but there's already system in place. I have a system called Input Manager, and it's not tied to any specific device. Those are just variables that you can control with controller, keyboard, even a joystick, and whatever input device you want to use. But when I want to actually, because it's not just that, there's things related to UI. If I want to make a controller support, there would have to be these other like complementary features for controllers. So I'm not implementing that yet, but the system is ready for that. Let's just say that. In the future, it will be a thing. Will there be bullet penetration? Yes, and actually there's a already system for that. I showed a clip maybe 4 months ago for bullet penetration, but I disabled that for the demo because there's ballistics in general are a thing that I want to implement really end of the production, because this penetration is just really small part of that whole ballistic like dimension. So I want to introduce all those at once instead of like adding sub features related to ballistics. Will we have to load magazines? I guess this means loading individual bullets to the magazine. In some sense, probably yes, but not actually taking all the time that it requires in real world. But I will guess there will be some time-related punishment if you have separate bullets that you have to load into magazines. But I will first introduce just separate ammo system like in Stalker, so no magazines, just ammos related to different calibers, and those ammo boxes are like your ammo containers. And that's the first step, and then after that will be the magazines. Please add floating health bars as an option. You're probably meaning the HUD elements like in DayZ where you see your stamina and health. They will be actual, this is the first HUD element that I showed related to equipment systems. Personally, I don't like to use any of these, but I understand that it's, for some it's really frustrating if you don't see you have some specific medical condition, for example, and you always have to press tab to access the menu. So there will be some character and vital related HUD elements also, but those will be toggled on and off. Yeah, one comment, I want to manually reload max I get what you're saying, and I'm going to implement something that would require like prepping your gear before you enter the map, but the actual bullet per bullet loading, it's a difficult topic, but yeah. I like the idea of picking up scopes in the field, not being an instant buff. Have you recorded all of those sounds yourself, or is there free libraries that you use? In terms of audio, I heavily lean towards libraries, but those are kind of, there isn't one for all audio library for game audio. For example, weapons are really hard to get right in terms of audio, and I'm more than happy to work with somebody, if there's somebody in the chat or you know somebody who's really experienced with working game-related weapon audio, and more importantly, if he already have an existing library that has good weapon audio in it. Because currently the Road to Vostok weapon audio is on the scale 1 to 10, maybe 5, and I really want to have like number 10 top tier weapon audio in the game. So I'm free to hire some freelancer part-time for those weapon audios, but the like thing is that that guy who makes those should have be like really top tier audio professional, because I can myself download some pretty okay weapon audio, but those top tier weapon audios aren't really existing in the market. There are some, but not for all weapons, and some clips of audio are missing, and it's a pain in the ass. The whole audio thing. It would be so much easier to just say somebody, here's some money, go do the best world-class audio for Road to Vostok for weapon sounds. And also recording those sounds for yourself, I actually have tried. It requires pretty expensive equipment to get good weapon audio, and range days which cost money and so on. So when you're working solo on a game, if I would do these field trips to record gun audio, the game progression again slows down. So I'm looking external help for that. But yeah, maybe one more question, then we have a small break, and then we continue with the texturing. Actually, let's take two questions. Would it be possible if I could work with you with this game for free? I'm a student at Toronto Film School for level design and animations. I want to have some work experience and something on my resume. Thank you for asking. My answer to this is that I'm unfortunately in a situation that I'm really like laser focused with the development. And sometimes, even though I would like to have that opportunity to offer these like internships and like accepting all kinds of help. I have been in the game industry for 10 years, and unfortunately that I know that having like more team members doesn't always just mean more work and progressive stuff. It also means that the communication time increases, there's meetings, information must be thrown around, I have to share files, there's backup systems, and all these kinds of like elements related to teamwork that I currently don't have to manage. And at this stage of the development, I want to keep it that way so the game progresses really fast like it have currently. But in the future, I'm totally open to offer some kind of like roles to do some specific thing, but it's not there yet. So thanks for asking, but currently the phase of the development doesn't really allow that, because it would kind of like give pressure and more risk towards the timeline that I have going on currently. But maybe after the public demo 2, closer to early access, the situation can be a little different. The final question, do you use scriptable objects for your loot tables? Can you show us if so? Yours look quite pretty in Devlog 3. Yes, I use scriptable objects. They are like these Unity specific data tables that are formed from the database, but I'm not sure if I actually want to show those, because those might reveal something that I'm not prepared for these dev sessions. I'm really careful not to show any Vostok side of stuff, so I'm hesitant that those loot tables will reveal something Vostok related things, so politely I have to decline. But if you want to see how those are formed, that Devlog 3 showed the general structure that you probably already have shown. But if somebody else want to see how those loot tables are formed, the Devlog 3 showed an example. But yeah, let's have a small break, maybe 5 minutes, and then we can get back to the actual production work. Enough talking, and let's use this silo texturing as today's main development tasks. So 5-minute break. If you have a beverage of choice, go get that, and let's continue after 5 minutes. Thanks. Okay, welcome back. Hopefully you had a wonderful break. And now we can continue with the actual production stuff. And at first I would like to explain, even though these dev sessions are not tutorials, I would like to explain some ground rules for 3D art that we are going to do now. And our like target today is this silo, which is a huge structure, almost 30 meters times 30 meters 3D element in the shipyard map. And actually I can show it here. So we are doing today this. And in general, when you are making 3D art, you have multiple approaches to texture stuff. For example, the most common way nowadays how people texture stuff is through dedicated texture software, which is this like really convenient and appealing 3D software where you can like 3D paint all kinds of textures. You have cool procedural generators, filters, and that's great if you're doing a small 3D element, for example, a character or weapon. Those are usually made in Substance Painter and all these cool 3D texturing softwares. I personally don't even use those. I use photo textures, but for example, these large structures are not meant for these dedicated 3D softwares. And the reason is that basically each pixel that you see on the texture, that has to be in some way in 2D format. And these large structures, they have so many pixels inside them that having just one like baked texture to this element would ruin the resolution, because it would have to wrap around the whole thing. And even we use seamless textures, there's problems with the repetition, so it doesn't look natural. For example, if you look at this, there's all kinds of different crunch and wear to these concrete elements, and we can't use just one texture for this. And then the other thing related to seamless textures I can highlight. By the way, this is the shipyard blockout that we began last dev session, and I finished that, and there's all kinds of masks related to how things are like prepared for the game engine, and those silos are here. We don't need this, but we need this. This is the actual silo 3D model. It's really simple, really low poly, but the actual, there's insides and all, but there's no textures. And the problem is that in general, if I would lay these UV elements, UV is like the 2D version of the model. Let's use, for example, these. If these walls were like one UV element here and there was just some brick texture around it, it would look totally unnatural, because there's all kinds of these organic things that happen in the nature, where there are crunch, dirt, exposure to the sun, and all kinds of elements that are important to the textures. And one method how like big studios and nowadays how pretty much all experienced 3D artists tackle this problem is through masking. And the idea is that do I have something where I can show it? Yes, here. For example, if let's imagine that this is our silo. There's the door. And the first layer, if I could say layer 1, can be this concrete. This is pretty hard with the mouse. Concrete texture. So concrete texture wraps around the whole mesh, but then to make it look more natural and organic, there has to be other layers on top of this that are masked on top of the concrete. For example, we could have some masks over here, some masks over here, maybe along with the door, and this mask reveals other set of seamless textures beneath the concrete texture. And there's multiple ways to approach this. Gradients are a way to make this layers-based blend textures. You can use splat masks, which are like image-based pixel maps. For example, black means one layer, red means another. But one approach that I think is king for all of these is something that doesn't require separate image textures, so it saves space, and something that is really easy to implement inside the 3D software that we are using. For me, it's Blender, and the technique that we are going to use today is called vertex color texture blending. And the best way to explain this is through some example, and like I mentioned when we begin this video, one video that I remember that showed this and what can be interesting to you that who like Escape from Tarkov, we can look one example from their original devlogs. For example, Battle State games use the same technique because it's so convenient. This, for example, is one of their customs map, and what were those buildings called? Dorms, if I remember correctly. And the way they have like prepped those models is that there's individual vertex points that form the geometry, and those vertex points hold vertex colors, meaning red, green, and blue, and they have a shader that we are also going to do today, which use that vertex blending. And for example, in here, the artist can just paint with the mouse and it reveals the beneath color on top of the main seamless thing. And this way of doing things with multiple layers allows that organic feel that there's all kinds of wear and tear and grunts and dirt. And then if we still add multiple elements to this, you can use different projection maps. For example, you can project from top, right, left, bottom, front, back, maybe some dirt maps. For example, this could be projected. But the main element that we're going to do today is to implement this blending feature. So basically multiple layers, and like real Gulag said, you can paint to reveal parts. So we are going to do just that. But the thing that we are going to do different from Tarkov is that Tarkov uses separate textures for blending. For example, they use, this is like the main texture, and then they have another texture set that is designed specifically for these textures, and those another textures take space. And I'm really big fan of like minimizing and keeping everything as simple as possible. So we are not even using a separate texture. We're basically modifying the base texture to look different and acts like a second texture. For example, we could change the saturation and contrast of the beneath texture and it would look different. Or at least this is what we are trying to do today. But to implement this second texture blending is really easy, and if this method that we implement today isn't enough, then I'm going to implement this texture blending off stream. But I'm pretty sure with my experience that we can make appealing silo structure with just one main texture. But we will see. But that's the main point. And now, if we look at this silo, here's basically the 3D model. And then if we look the base texture that I already did, this is the concrete one. And there's no blending and vertex colors yet, so it's pretty dull. It doesn't look realistic. And even if we take that ambient occlusion effect off and put that shadeless, it's basically this ugly white blob. So having just this one static texture isn't enough. So this needs that blending. The first thing that we are going to do is a really simple one. In 3D softwares, you can implement those vertex colors really easily. They are easily accessible in every 3D program, can paint vertex colors, and in Blender we have this specific mode called vertex paint. And in here I have basically color palette. I can paint just a moment. Paint different colors, and these will be blend in the game engine. These might look little too like low res, but trust me, these masks can be modified in the game engine with shaders. So even though there's this one weird shape, we can change the blending and break the pattern in the shader. So the approximation is like the keyword here. So you have to like paint things approximately where you want. It's not have to be that specific. But if you want to have like really specific vertex paint masks, you need tons of geometry. For example, if I want to have smooth in 3D, sorry, I have to put that on. Now I can make more specific patterns, but I'm really more towards optimizing stuff, so I don't need that much geometry. But yeah, let's do some vertex painting, and what we are going to do, the first layer, I'm going to use the color red. I'm going to highlight areas that I want to have some wear to them, meaning the concrete has maybe a little bit darkened and wear around these corner areas on top of this, and usually the sharp corners are the ones that in real life get weathered down because people bump into those, and there's all kinds of weather elements related to sharp corners. So I'm going to use red color. I'm going to select the geometry that I want to paint, and I'm starting to implement those colors now. Maybe there's one. Actually, let's start from the black one. This is more easy to see in stream maybe. Yeah, that might be enough. And this is also like free data, because either way, if you paint these or not, each time you import a 3D model to game engine, it will include vertex data. If you don't paint anything, the vertex data is black, but having these vertex colors don't cost any performance or memory size or anything. So this is basically free masks. Then let's paint here along with the pillar. Yep. Maybe across here, and we can also be a bit random. By the way, do you guys see this clearly? Meaning this even though I'm in the 3D software and there's all kinds of like really small details and lines. Does this relay to stream well? Yep. Maybe a little more here. Okay, now let's see where are those pillars. Here. One's here. Okay, I think we're ready. But now for the interiors, I think pretty much the same workflow. We have to hide the roof, so maybe we select just these. Maybe we'll add one like dropping, leaking line there, and okay, I think we're finished. So now we have painted the masks to this 3D model. The player doesn't ever see these. These are hidden inside the geometry, and the data is stored in here. Each 3D model has a separate way to store vertex color data. I'm going to name these VC means vertex color and silo, and now our 3D model is ready. We have like 3 material slots. One is for main textures, which will be blend. One is for roof and this bottom area, and one is for these. I think this is all we need. Scales are 1, rotation 0, location 0, and this is pretty much production ready in terms of geometry. So let's export this. And then let's take it to Unity. Normally I would organize these to specific files, but now, because I don't want to reveal anything that I should not reveal, I'm going to use this dev session 2 file folder. Here's our silo. And the first layer of textures that we are going to use is that base layer, which is not blend yet. So this is just seamless textures, but nothing organic. For example, just harsh transitions here, here, and inside looks pretty bland. Just quickly checking out if chat is okay. Seems fine. Okay. The second layer that we use is for those details, and I have specific tools because I don't want to texture these small and UV these details myself. So I'm going to use a simple triplanar operation which projects textures to these, and because I don't use any PBR rendering, this is kind of really cheap because I only have to project one set of textures. I have this metallic rust texture. Now it's on there. Those didn't have any UVs or anything like that. Then we have that roof one. I have a specific roof shader. The top texture will be this like wait a minute. Something isn't working with this one yet. Maybe we have to check that later on, but this will be placed on top of the UVs later on. But now I will check that soon, what's wrong with the roof one. I don't know. But yeah, I check that soon. But then we get into the blending. The vertex colors are displayed if you want to see them. They are transported in the game engine and they are placed here, and every game engine can use these. And now we are going to make a shader for this. Shaders are basically ways to tell GPU how you want to display your pixels, and shaders are one area of game development that usually requires a separate person in a big budget production. That person is usually called the technical artist, because this is kind of like middle ground between coding and artistic skills. These are just node-based shaders. I usually use node-based stuff because I'm a visual person and I gravitate more towards something that I can see instead of code, but I also can write shaders in code. It's just a matter of preference. But for example, I'm going to expand this thing later on, so it's easy to add different modules and groups to this shader after the stream. Usually shaders are separated to two different categories. There are vertex shaders, where we can manipulate geometry. For example, if we want to make, for example, a wind shader, the trees of the village map, for example, they are manipulated in the vertex part of the shader. For example, the branches are noise scrolls through them, and they are like different amplitude and frequency, how those branches move. But in this time, we want to approach fragment shader, which handles all the actual colors. But yeah, we could start by adding maybe a couple of different nodes. First, we want to use the main texture, and we're going to use a node called sample texture 2D. I'm not going to explain all of this, but basically we want to sample the first set of textures. For example, in Tarkov, that first set was the wall texture, the second texture was the crunch texture, and so on. So let's name this base texture. Then we want to multiply it with color, so we can change how it looks. So we're basically, if I want to color red texture, this sample texture turns to red, and so on. But white is good for us. I'm going to name it base color. And now our shader is named custom lit blend. And if we change this texture, which is some Unity out of the box texture, we use something, where is it? Custom lit blend. This is now our own shader. We can place the main texture, and here's the color property. Yay. But not quite there yet. Okay, then the actual cool stuff, which means that how to make it more organic and how to utilize those vertex colors. The first thing that we're going to do, because there's like multiple phases to this, we are going to project a noise map to this base texture. And usually this is something that is really subtle, but hopefully you can see soon what I mean. We're going to use a thing called triplanar, which is projection. Every game engine have something like this. We are going to name this texture noise texture. Noise is something that is just black and white. Noise can be generated inside the shader. For example, this is computer generated noise. There's all kind of different noise pattern, gradient noise, Voronoi noise. But the most common one is this, which is called Berlin noise. But we are going to have a separate slot for that. Then we're going to blend these. Somebody who's familiar with Photoshop knows that all these like blend modes, burn, lighten, linear dodge, and so on, which are really common things in image editing softwares. So we're going to, our base texture will be blend to our noise map, and then it's connected to shader's base color. And this will be the opacity, how much the noise will appear on top of the base texture. So we're going to have a separate variable for that, noise opacity. And there's also how much we want to tile that noise. Noise tiling. And now we can do some house cleaning. This was the base texture. Noise texture. Okay, let's see if it works. We could actually use something from online. Let's make ourselves our own Berlin noise generator. So totally free. Maybe have noise pattern. I actually have a noise map already in the game, but I want to just show how this development works. So I'm making like one additional noise map so you can see how this process works. Cell size, meaning how much noise is there, could be something like 226. That looks kind of right. Levels, meaning the detail of noise. Maybe too much. 3. I think we can bump this 4. Yeah. This looks kind of great. Let's name this to texture Berlin noise. And let's bring it to Unity. Okay, now we have this noise map. We're going to attach it to our shader, and now we can see that the noise is really tiled and seamless there. We are going to push the tiling down, maybe 101. Too much. too much. Yep, and then we're going to change the blending mode. The overlay, it's kind of okay, but if we want to make it more dramatic, we can use maybe linear burn, which kind of like burns the texture. For example, now it does something like this, but maybe for this one we can just use the overlay or screen. Let's use that overlay. Okay, so that's the first phase. Now we have a modular Berlin noise. We can change the opacity of that noise and tiling. Little subtle detail. The next thing is the actual vertex color blending, and this is the most important one. I actually might still take I maybe have to use my own Berlin noise after this. This pattern is not that good, but maybe that was just for showcased. But I have a specific set of Berlin noise textures that I can use later on if I want. But now, the actual blending. Vertex colors are stored in shaders by using a vertex color node. And this stores our red masks. And we connect it to this noise texture by using a node called lerp. This is a fun sounding thing, but basically this is the T slot is basically the masks. This is what you want to blend, where you want to blend, and so on. So we want to use our red color from the vertex data as a masks. We take color masks. We want to use red. And we want to blend our base texture, and then the darker one used a separate, like I mentioned, we can use a separate texture for here. For example, if I want to add some moss texture to this, we could use different texture slot, but I want to save memory and use just one texture. So I'm going to use this same base texture. So no additional textures are used. We're going to sample that. By the way, don't guys worry if you think making shaders is totally boring or something. Our shader is soon ready, so we can tweak the actual visual stuff of the blending. We want to use different colors for our masks. We're going to name this blend color, and we can actually already test that this works. Let's connect it to our shader. And now if I change, yep, it works, but the blending isn't right. We have to tweak these values, so we're going to have variables for blend range. And the fuzziness is basically the softness. I don't know why it uses that word, but it basically means softness. And we can do house cleaning again. that's basically our shader is now finished. We have now the capability to modify all the masking parameters. We have actually, we don't have yet used. I usually want to use contrast for the blend texture. So we put contrast node on top of this. Blend contrast. And now if I made everything correctly, this should work. The first thing is that we want to increase that range, and now we can see that our masks that we painted are displayed on black. We have that blend softness that we can tweak. For example, in these areas, we can see that this softness works like intended. The range works. And then we want to add color. The first color, for example, if you look at here, when I tweak the contrast, I don't even have additional textures, but it looks like there's another texture on top of it. And it blends perfectly because it's the actual same texture that it is. I'm just tweaking the blended contrast value. So now this like represents the wear, and we can tweak how it now with the softness with the negative values, it's really hard. And this is what I mentioned, that it's not that specific where you paint those, because you can tweak those values inside the game engine. And maybe a bit more darker. Let's see how these goes. Too much contrast. Okay, let's check it in game. There was one question, is it HDRP, meaning high definition render pipeline? No, just URP, universal render pipeline. Those effects are really subtle, but they do show. For example, if we do some before and after thing, let's put this all to 0. This was the starting point. And now you can see that there's different kind of noise all around this, and this is totally free data. No additional textures used. And after the stream, I'm actually going to use a procedural noise, so it doesn't even require this noise texture. I just did that for the stream. But yeah, the resolution is quite good. Now we just have to figure out what's wrong with the roof. The roof is there. The roof has UVs. The roof is connected to material. Okay, I wasn't planning to do this, but we have to do some live debugging and see what's wrong with the roof shader. Usually this kind of like lesson for debugging stuff. Usually you first want to, because it's time consuming to go through all of these, usually you just want to test if even something works, because you don't want to blame something where the reason isn't. So I'm just doing some debug test for the silo, and now we connected to this, and now if there's no texture displaying, then the fault is in the 3D model, but if there's a texture placing on top of the model, then the reason is inside the shader. And now the reveal. Okay, so our debugging worked, so the reason is inside the shader. And I already know what the reason is. So basically I have a vertex masks also to the roof, meaning top roof is stored in the red channel and the bottom roof is stored on the green channel. So now if we add colors to these are different slots. These will be green. And now when we update the model to Unity, it should fix automatically. Yep, it worked. And now we assign the roof shader properly on the top. The tiling is too much. There's this procedural crunch map. The tiling, it should have pretty good resolution, yes. Now the bottom one. Actually, still one mistake. The bottom one was blue. The side. Wait a second. Yeah, this should be blue because green is reserved if I want to use side textures. Now, if this doesn't work, I'm calling myself a lousy developer because I'm pretty sure that this was the mistake. And it worked. No lousy developers at this time. Then just tiling, maybe 2. Contrast a little bit. The details may be a bit more metallic looking. Okay. And for this silo, we are going to, now there's crunch and dirt, and I'm going to do some off-stream tweaking still. But you probably get the point how large structures like this could be textured in a really fast way. In total, if I would measure how much I did time for this modeling, maybe 15 minutes. And then the textures, meaning this base texture because I use photo textures and grid-based snapping, maybe 5 minutes. So in total of 20 minutes of modeling, texturing, and how much did the shader stuff, maybe half an hour. And now we have a modular shader for the rest of the production if we have large structures, because in honesty, I didn't have this shader already in this project. I have made similar shaders before, but Road to Vostok didn't need these vertex color blend shaders for structures earlier, because in Village, for example, there isn't any large structures like this. But now we can place a couple of these in the shipyard map when there's time, and I would say tomorrow when there's a VIP video, there's one comment about triplanar shaders which are quite expensive. Triplanar shaders nowadays, if you measure performance, the most important thing nowadays is draw call and material optimization. For example, this thing, even though it uses triplanar projection, it's only for one texture. For example, if you use PPR textures, you have to project normals, roughness, and then the triplanar is expensive if you have to do, for example, 12 projections. But because I only have one texture map and all my models are really like small in terms of memory footprint and material slots, and there's not much geometry happening, the one texture slot projection is totally fine. I have measured this multiple times with the profiler, and you don't even notice the projection, because these silos, they are the like main key event of the map. If there's 2 silos using one shader, we are talking under 1 millisecond for frame time, and it's nothing with modern GPUs. But yeah, I know that in early days triplanar was kind of like this no-no word, but it was 10 years ago. If you today look, for example, Unreal Engine modern out-of-the-box shader, I would argue that is 10 more times expensive than this shader that we did today. Yes, every texture that you project requires texture sampling. So if I would have to texture normal maps, you have to use another triplanar and sampling. So it kind of like exponentially makes it more expensive. But for my workflow, it works really fine because there's only one. But yeah, hopefully you get the point how these natural looking things, I would not say that this is like photorealistic or anything like that, but this project doesn't aim to be this like AAA style. For this purpose, I think the village map will use just fine for this silos, and a little bit of tweaking in tomorrow's VIP video. You get to see what this silo looks like when I have prepared lighting and maybe some graffitis to it. For example, we can use these decals, which are like final touches. There's now decal in this floor, and even though it looks bland now, but wait for tomorrow when there's lighting and graffitis, so maybe it's better. But you have a sense of pride when you look tomorrow at the VIP video that this is what we did yesterday, so it's actual production stuff, not just for the stream. Okay, let's save our Unity scene. I will place that to the shipyard map tonight. Ideology done, vertex paint done, shaders done, and I think I will do that finalization, meaning tweak the noise maps and the masks positions maybe a bit. For example, the interiors need a bit more specific painting. But yeah, that was a quick way to texture large structures while maintaining a good texture resolution and keeping the texture count optimal. But now, if you have any questions, we can go through those. In this session, we already talked about maps, a little bit about attachments, Area 5 stuff, map events, and then we did some texturing and recap of the month. So if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer. Will the VOD be online after the stream? I heard that if you like this stream or press watch it later, because it will be stored privately, so you can access the link. So yes, there will be a VOD, but it's a private one. But it's there. Is there going to be Discord server for the community? Probably at some point, but like mentioned in the last dev session, I'm pretty careful with having a large community hub currently because I have no experience of running like this large community on Discord. So I have to learn a bit about how Discord bots work and how to moderate stuff before I actually implement that. But in the future, having some community hub like Discord would be great, but not yet. Why place decals by hand? Why not develop a procedural system? I actually have a procedural system for that. For example, all the houses in the village map, they are not placed by hand. There's a procedural system for that, but that silo one would require some specific placement because, for example, the procedural system can place them really high because it would be unrealistic that there's some graffiti in middle of the really big structure. So there's a couple of decals, so I might place that in hand. But that system is really useful when you have some like normal buildings and such. You should make a playlist full of VODs even if they are private. If I'm understood correctly, these are already in a sessions playlist. How detailed are you planning clothing system to be? Like thermal insulation, waterproof layers, camo layers. Insulation will be a thing, and camo abilities will be a thing because I already have AI system in developed, not fully done, but already tested that will detect player on this pixel basis. It's really hard to explain this, but basically the AI takes a screenshot of the world. Actually, didn't I showcase some example in... Yeah, if you look at the campfire video on my YouTube channel, there's an QA session where I talk about AI and there's an explanation of how player clothing will affect AI in the future. I assume that you're gonna add other textures as well, like normal roughness, etc. No, Road to Vostok don't use PBR rendering at all. That's one of the restrictions and guidelines for the production, how I can implement really fast stuff. And visually, if you, for example, look, maybe I go to the game, I have taught game development and visual game design stuff for 4 years, and BBR is a modern standard for 3D graphics, yes, but having just a base map, oh, where the weapons, they were inside, having just a base map for weapons, you can still do those BBR stuff when you fake them in the shader. For example, all the weapons and such, there's don't have to be normal maps. You can use all kinds of tricks to fake those PBR, but currently Road to Vostok don't use any of those. Those are for production reasons and also how this game can run so fast and how I can implement stuff which are possible because there's no PBR, because I have more frame budget, because the shaders are so simple and so on. Will you keep updating the game even after you release it? Absolutely. I'm here for the long run. This ain't just some publish and run away game. I already named my company Road to Vostok Ltd because I'm here for the long run, and I will not stop until this is the best hardcore survival game out there, and it requires a bunch of post-launch production. How many publishers have contacted you about this game already? There have been a bunch, but I expect, because publishers usually approach you through some like scouting people, and they are really low-level contacts, and most developers that publish things publicly, I would just probably there's all kinds of emails in every developer's inbox, but all publishers are not interested just in publishing your game. There's also like bundles and collaborations and so on, but for now I have kept this independent status and not worked with publishers. Will you have custom music for this game, maybe for the title screen, safe places? Yes, I actually just yesterday published another 2 custom OST songs, and on top of this there's this ambient collection, and you can listen all these through SoundCloud, for example. What are some things you wish you knew when starting with game development? I would say mastering things matters. For example, most new developers tend to gravitate towards new and shiny stuff. For example, whenever there's a new Unreal release or new Unity release, it's an immediate download and transition to that. Good games usually operate under old versions of game engines because it's all about mastering the tools that you use, not just jumping from new tool to another. For example, in Road to Vostok, I don't use any other tools than Blender, Photoshop and Unity. There's no additional software related to graphics or game engine, and mastering these 3 tools is much more important than having a tool set of 20 different tools. When I was starting in game development, I was just that kind of developer. I had huge number of tools. I thought that good developer must learn all these things, but the actual moment when you start to make progress is when you start mastering these things. For example, I use this old version of Blender. Currently, Blender don't look like this, but I would almost argue that if I shut my eyes, I could name each one of these buttons and text on the screen. I know all the hotkeys. There are over 200 of those, and I've used this specific version probably 5 years straight. So I have mastered this version, and that's why it takes me so little to make these models. And this is also a good lessons learned moment. Even though I could make AAA graphics, for example, I could use photogrammetry techniques for this silo. I could use PBR rendering. I could use all kinds of cool depth masks and cool effects, but I don't have to. I can still do okay job by doing things as simple as possible. So kind of maintaining your level of skill set in a reasonable bar is important, meaning you don't always have to do the absolute maximum difficulty you can do. For example, probably the hardest thing in Road to Vostok that I will have to do is some character related stuff. But even though I have done hundreds of different characters before. So in this project, there isn't anything that I haven't done before and anything that is really hard to do. And that's how you achieve things fastly, because things that you do are easy for you. Kind of hard to explain, but hopefully you get my point. Efficiency comes with mastery. That's pretty good. Well said. How much money you invested in this game? The actual amount of money isn't that much, because I do all by myself. So all that I would have to pay is my bills and time for this project. But in the future, I do see that I would have to invest a bit more towards some freelance stuff. For example, the audio. If there's a good weapon audio guy, I would hire that. But I would say I'm going to invest as much as this project needs in order to become the best hardcore survival game out there. It will take years for this game to earn that status, but I think game industry needs kind of like commitment that I'm trying to portray here, because most developers jump from project to another, and that's kind of annoying, because I personally want to invest time as a player also to the game. So it's annoying that each time a game finishes, it never truly reach its potential, because the developers are already fixated on some other new shiny project. So Road to Vostok will need some time and money, but I'm fine by that. Better question. How many hours invested? No idea, because probably no idea. A lot, but I don't count those hours because this is fun for me. I don't consider this as job, so it's fine by me. Will there be a weapon cleaning and sorry, I cannot pronounce that system in the game? Yes, and there's already one example shown in the I think that was also in the campfire video, where I showed the shader which adds that wear and rust to the weapon, and each weapon will have a condition percent. For example, let's pick up one weapon. For example, the bottom stat condition is now 100, and there will be weapon wear system in the game, and each item is actually have a different condition. Do you take all the photos that you used on texturing weapons, landscape, buildings? I would say 95% I take all the photos, because I really like this urban exploration where I go to the places and photograph them by myself. But of course there are textures that I can't physically reach. For example, if there's some roof textures, I can't climb on some roofs, and I don't have drones to take those aerial photos of the roofs, so I use textures.com for some of those, but I would say 95% textures are done by myself. What was the hardest or most time-consuming feature to make? And this is directly linked to the point that currently there isn't any hard or most time-consuming things to make, because Road to Vostok is a project that is designed to be easy for me. My actual skill level is way more higher, and way this project is developed is designed in a way that this is easy for me, and that's how I make progress really fast because I don't have to learn new skills or anything like that. It's kind of hard topic to explain in this format, but it's all about designing workflows and tools that are really efficient for you. And I don't remember when last time I had some like really hard problem. Of course, there are bugs. For example, there was in public demo 1, there was equipment related bug. Some people didn't get to equip weapons. It took me 2 months almost to understand what caused that bug, but those are really like individual based things, meaning somebody might have plugged a USB controller to the computer and it interferes with the system, but some bugs are hard to debug, but that bug is now fixed. Not implemented in the Steam yet, but I know what caused that, but not that hard features. Will you update the movement at all? Yes. Almost every feature in the project will be updated to the level that is considered to be the best in the genre, meaning the best movement system in the survival game genre, best looting system in the survival game genre, but it takes multiple phases to get there. The first phase is all about playability and enjoyability, and after that, then it's more towards innovation and what makes the best in-class systems. Will I be able to speedrun Road to Vostok? This is actually one topic that I have thought, meaning what if somebody just tries to run to the Vostoks and not collect any stuff and kind of hack the system in some sense. But I have developed some things that will punish you if you're not prepared for that. So technically, if the goal of the game is to have this dangerous journey, you can basically speed run to that journey, but this game there is no winning condition in that sense. But there's also preparations to be made that you can't go there unprepared. How will you handle piracy? Do you mean like people stealing your work or something like that? If you mean that, I've already given probably, well, maybe I don't discuss the actual numbers, but there's so many different aspects to this project that I'm willing to open source to have that like healthy modding community and so on. So even though somebody would kind of rip off all the codes and assets from me, I wouldn't lost my night's sleep, because if that guy is as dedicated as I am and wants to develop the best hardcore survival game, go ahead, cheers for him, and I will play that game. But the actual work that this project needs, meaning going to these places, photographing them, having those hours in, that can be stealed. So I can sleep my nights pretty well, even though this game gets pirated. In some games, that could be a good thing in the future, that somebody like, maybe I don't know, recommend stealing anything, but I'm going to open source all the assets at some point in any case. So I'm here not to have these NDAs and exclusive things. This is more of like at some point a community thing anyway. Yeah, Unity can be easily decompiled. Yep. And even though I know how to make these all kinds of like formatting your code base in a binary format and protecting your code, I'm not spending any time towards that, because at the end this will be an open source project at some point. So I'm just trusting that people have good ethics and don't do evil stuff yet. Where did you study game development, or did you study yourself? When I started, there wasn't that much possibilities in Finland to study game development. There was just YouTube tutorials and lesson learned moments and small experiments, so I did study all by myself. But nowadays, when I have taught game development for 4 years and when I have seen how fast the students evolve, I was kind of jealous that some student had in 1 or 2 years the same level of expertise that I had probably in 5 years. So going to some good game development school or having a mentor that knows what he's doing can be a like really good speed boost for your progress and skills. So I wish that I would have go to some school back then. Any tips for those starting game development? I would have lots of tips, but one good tip is that don't try to make your dream game at first. Make small projects, and one good like hack to increase your game dev knowledge, because game dev includes so many like specific words and phrases and tools. In order to understand all those in a fast way, I would use something like Feedly, which is an RSS reader where you can link and curate all the game development sources like different tutorial channels, game development blogs, game dev influencers, and all those into one convenient place. And then you have this mobile app where you can scroll really easily, like the hot news of game dev today. I still use that software, but having something like curated form of learning is really useful because it's so easy to just go through the feed and then you are easily drawn towards something that is interesting to you and you want to learn more. So something like that, it's good. But other than that, start small, figure out where you're good at. For example, I was good at visual stuff at first. Then I learned coding after that. Don't try to do all at once. Learn something first, try to master it, and then try something else. Will there be any Swedish or rare weaponry? Yes, there will be all kinds of weaponry, and I think this kind of game needs a large base of weapons. So there will be all kinds of Nordic weapons, all kinds of old Soviet weapons, all kinds of NATO weapons, and so on. Will there be a division between Russians and Finns? Will there be a system of teams and others? Even though this game is placed in the border zone of Finland and Russia, there isn't any nationalities. You don't play as a Finn, you don't play as a Russian. There's no allies or enemies in that sense. This is just like the game world is placed there because that place is interesting and provides a good foundation for survival game, but nationality doesn't exist in this game. It would be annoying that if I would have to force you to play as a Finnish survivalist or something like that. No, there isn't any nationality to this game. Where are you from? I'm from Finland. Why are AIs hostile then? That's the thing that you have to find out in the game. Like mentioned in the early part of the stream, I want to keep things kind of like some aspects of the lore in a way that you have to understand the lore yourself. It's hidden in the game world through environmental clues and some quests, and if you're interested about what has happened in the world, that lore is there to be found. Okay, one feedback that I would like to have, what do you think about, I don't know if there's anybody who watched from start to beginning. This actually took, how many hours this has taken? 3 hours, so 1 hour more than I originally expected. But if there's somebody who watched from the beginning, what did you think about today's dev session? Was this fun to watch? Was there some boring parts of the stream? How this stream could be improved to dev session 3? Myself, I like mentioned in the before, I think I was much more relaxed than in first stream, and I think these development sessions are something that I want to improve on and do this live. So dev session 3 should already be another improvement to this and so on. And one thing that I want to get rid of is this way of speaking English that involves lots of words like, dislike, for example, like everything is the like word comes too often when I listen to myself, but it's something that I try to improve over time, and that's why I do these dev sessions to get better. You need mods for the chat. We actually plan to do or implement a moderator for this chat, but was there any problems? At least I didn't see any bots. Was there any bots on the stream, or just bad behavior or something that would require having moderators? There was one particular troll. I missed that, but hopefully it wasn't that bad. At least that only subscribers can comment helped with the bots that we had previous stream. That's actually a good suggestion from the Nordic Bear. Adding a pinned comment with links and FAQs, frequently asked questions, could help new people to get up to speed. That's actually a good idea. I should implement to next stream something like that. Okay, I had tons of fun. Hopefully you enjoyed. Tomorrow there's going to be a VIP video. You will see some new stuff, equipment system for those who haven't seen it yet. Some new items, probably. I don't remember what I showed in this session, but yeah, new VIP video. And if you haven't listened to the OST tracks or ambient collection, you can find those on SoundCloud. And in next month, the big hurdle is the attachment system that we discussed a bit. I'm going to try to have some good middle ground to that, because having something like Tarkov isn't viable yet for Road to Vostok. But some good, playable and fun attachment system is the big milestone for next month, and also having that village map extended to its commercial version and finalizing or at least improving, going further with the shipyard map is what's also important in order to keep up with the timeline for public demo 2. Okay, thank you for all for joining, and see you in the next dev session. Follow Road to Vostok on YouTube, and even if you want to see behind the scenes stuff, consider joining Road to Vostok Patreon. But I had tons of fun. See you in the next stream. Bye.